I'm joined right now, once again, by legal hero Larry Klayman. Larry, how are you? Looking very well today.
I'm doing good, hanging in there.
It's all we can
Tough
hope
times.
for. Yeah, it's all we can hope for these days, Larry. You know, I think a lot of people were very surprised that Joe Biden was so successful on Super Tuesday. It seemed like he was virtually out of this race. You've recently had some interactions with Joe Biden pertaining to your YouTube lawsuit. What do you want to share with everybody today, Larry?
Well, that's right. And actually, the only reason that Joe Biden is riding high right now is because Bernie Sanders came out of the closet, showed who he was, showed that he's a communist, praising Castro, trashing Israel, Netanyahu, the prime minister. I mean, he just self-destructed at that point, although Warren just got out of the race, so he's going to get a boost on that one. But I do have a lawsuit against both Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. It's in Palm Beach County, Florida, because when I did a Radio America show, my show Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, that you can hear on 50 stations or so every Sunday, and you can get it podcast at freedomwatchusa.org. It's on iPhone, Spotify, Patreon, Amazon Fire, Roku. It's everywhere. You can sign up for it. That's a little commercial. But in any event, what happened was I on a radio show, I said, look, we're going to commission our citizens grand jury, and you know all about that, Jason, and we're going to seat the indictment of Joe Biden and his son Hunter for the Ukrainian bribery scandal.
Right.
We're going to not just indict them, but try them and fry them legally and peacefully, sentence them and seek to have those sentences meted out peacefully and legally. Hopefully the president would step in at that point once reelected. They immediately, the Bidens, through their campaign and individually, we believe, interfered with my YouTube and Google channel, had all the videos taken down for decades. And I then had to call and email the lawyers for Biden, who are the same lawyers as, it was the lawyers for Google YouTube, Williams and Conley. They're the law firm I fought all these years that defended the Clintons. And I said, look, if you don't get your client, Google and YouTube, to put my postings back up, then I'm going to sue Biden, his son, and you. I'll put them all in one big pot, and you can deal with that. And they freaked out, and they put it back. But in the meantime, I wound up suing Biden for the interference because his campaign manager admitted that she was interfering with things that they didn't consider to be helpful to their campaign, quote unquote, even tweets by the president. So we've got a hearing in Palm Beach on April 13th on that case with regard to their motion to dismiss. I don't believe they'll be successful, but we're proceeding, full guns ahead, figuratively speaking, with Biden. He needs to be held accountable. You can't do these sleazy things. And then we will be having a citizens grand jury. You're going to be there sometime in the next few months, and we're going to seek the indictments of the Biden. Somebody's got to do it because our worthless and scaredy cat, for lack of a word, Attorney General Bill Barr, who's taken a dive on indicting anybody so far, is not going to do anything to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. People have become very concerned about William Barr's inaction, Larry. It's something that you and I have been tracking since the first day he showed up. Some are even saying there's just simply no way that anything will happen at this stage. And you have been one of the loudest voices towards that end, saying that from the word go. But I mean, Hunter Biden particularly has just so many legal problems right now. Are you up to speed on what's going on with the paternity suit? And I mean, how does he just get kicked out of the Navy for cocaine use, but no criminal charges follow?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, every family has its black sheep, so to speak. Hunter Biden seems to be one of them. I feel bad for Biden and his family. He lost his wife and some kids way back when he was a young senator. He just lost another son. But this son apparently is, basically just a half-wit. And it's not that he got his father in trouble. His father participated in this with the Ukraine. They shook down, Burisma, and they shook down the Ukrainian government. Now, allegedly, the Ukraine is doing an investigation. Frankly, I doubt that. I think that's to basically pacify Trump on that. But These people need to be held accountable. And, Biden has this Cheshire grin. And, he's probably, if he ever is elected president, God forbid, he will be the dumbest president in my lifetime next to George W. Bush and Gerald Ford. And Gerald Ford looks like a genius compared to W and him. And, it's a frightening proposition. Now, I don't endorse him, or I don't do that as head of Freedom Watch or whatever, or oppose him. I don't tell people who to vote for, but we are going to bring them to justice. And the meme that you have is appropriate, because this is where these two of them deserve to be behind bars, and it's not going to happen at the Justice Department. Look at Hillary Clinton. They let her go recently, with regard to all the things she's done at the Clinton Foundation. They let Comey go, they let McCabe go, they let Clapper go, they let Brennan go, a whole lot of them. And Bill Barr is an establishment creature. He doesn't want to risk his own standing in the Washington community. He doesn't want blowback, because in Washington, D.C., the deep state, the intel state, has dirt on everyone. I'm sure they have enough on Barr. And this is the way it works. It's a complete road show. It's a pony show. It's a reality series. And if you want to see the reality series each night, go to Hannity and watch Fox News, because, and this is interesting, is that even Greg Jarrett on Fox, who was always so optimistic about an investigation, even he says nothing's going to come out of this Justice Department on any front, including with John Durham, who allegedly is doing some investigation up there in Connecticut of everything that went on with FISA and everything else.
Yeah. And Larry, sorry, you got a little something here to deal with. So you're very familiar with the procedures related to indicting somebody and how long these types of things usually take. With this much evidence, do you see any real legal, practical reason as to why these setting aside the Washington Club, everybody scratching each other's backs, do you see a practical reason why these indictments wouldn't be happening?
No, there's none. Absolutely none. But look, past is a prologue. It's on the front of our archives, on Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, then it meant something. But today, what it means is cover-up. And when, in my lifetime, has anyone been held accountable at a high level? The answer is never. And I'm 68 years old. Never. And it's only getting worse and worse and worse. So nobody's held accountable. Public officials in government, executive and legislative branch, judges aren't held accountable. They sit in judgment of themselves. When you file a complaint for their unethical conduct, they throw it in the trash. Bar associations, the disciplinary council, like DC Disciplinary Council, takes the position they have immunity. They can do whatever they want. They can destroy whatever lawyer they want that they don't like for political purposes. It is out of control. These people are not accountable, and we are in a revolutionary state. But the American people don't fully know it yet, not enough to do anything about it. And while I don't advocate anything other than peaceful and legal means, it's going to come to worse than that, I'm sure. And there are various groups out there, Antifa, Dream Defenders, who just endorsed Bernie Sanders, who Sanders then embraced them. This is a black, separatist, anti-Semitic, pro-radical Palestinian group in the mold of Farrakhan. They're out there. They're trying to do a number on Joel Gilbert and I and the Trayvon hoax. They hate police. They're radicals. They supported Andrew Gillum and got him in a lot of trouble during his campaign when he was running for governor to be associated with them because they have ties to Palestinian terrorists. This is the world we live in. Bernie Sanders getting that endorsement and embracing them. It's unbelievable. And just the other day, he says Ilhan Omar is one of the greatest Americans in world history. And Rashida Tlaib and Linda Sarsour, vehement anti-Semites. I mean, Bernie's not a Jew. Bernie is a traitor. Okay, that's what he is.
Yeah.
And these people are out there in force all over the country, and he's trying to unite all these radical groups behind him. And now that Warren's out of the race, God forbid what may happen.
Yeah. And so do you anticipate Elizabeth Warren becoming the running mate for Joe Biden? Or do you think there was an announcement from your second favorite woman in politics, Michelle Obama, that she's having some kind of rally in Detroit?
I think that's a really good possibility. I actually hadn't thought of it up to this point in time, Jason. Yeah, I mean that's a logical person to put on the ticket. It's a twofer. It's a radical leftist male and a radical leftist female, and it makes sense. But for the fact that people don't seem to like Pocahontas, she got very few votes. She couldn't even win her own state. Amy Klobuchar backed out. She probably was, they probably hinted she might be vice president. She's a nothing. I mean, she's just a little dwarf, as a matter from my perspective. And I don't know who else they would go to. I mean, they may actually go to Andrew Gillum here. They might want an African American on the ticket who's very articulate, and he's extremely dangerous. I mean, he's a socialist too, with ties to radical Palestinian interests. This is going to be a real show. And Biden, even though he's riding high today, and I don't wish him any harm physically, but I don't think he's even going to make it to a general election. His health is so bad. Looks like he's going to croak of a stroke any minute. I mean, he can't put together even where he is half the time.
Yeah,
Super Thursday. I mean, that says it all. Super Thursday.
He's made quite a lot of gaffes for sure. But it's astounding to me, and I think a lot of other people who are watching Crowdsource the Truth, that Joe Biden, they're saying he's surging and all this. I mean, Larry, this is really just the same thing we saw in 2016, right? We've got Bernie out there, and then they'll find some screwy way to take the nomination from him. I don't understand how people who are pro-Bernie can continue to tolerate this kind of nonsense.
Well, I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to go to the streets. I really do, because the people that support Bernie, like I'm saying, radical Muslims, radical people of the Jewish left, and I'm a Jewish Christian, I'm Messianic Jew, so I don't mean that in an anti-Semitic way, but our own people, Jason, are frankly on the left. They're a disgrace, and they're fomenting anti-Semitism. Most Jewish people are not like this, which is why we have a coalition of the Jewish right at Freedom Watch, freedomwatchusa.org, and Christians also are members of that. You've got radical feminists, you've got radical blacks, you've got radical Muslims, you've got atheists, communists. They're all banding together because they want to take this country down. They want to destroy it. They want to seize control. And if they don't get it at the ballot box, I think they're going to resort to violence, more violence. They've already been a lot of violence here, shooting congressmen, in Virginia, those kinds of things. So, we're in a dangerous period, and these Bernie Sanders people are riled up, and they're going to go to the streets, and we better be prepared, and we better, frankly, be prepared for self-defense, just like George Zimmerman was.
Right. Now, Larry, you're speaking about violence. Very recently, there was a profound act of violence. It's preliminarily being called a suicide, but we know how these people who tend to turn up unfavorable evidence of the Clintons and certain Democrats tend to fall victims to alleged suicides. Phil Haney was a DHS whistleblower and played an important role in the Holy Land Foundation trial. He's worked with our mutual friend, Laura Loomer, and unfortunately now he's been killed by a gunshot wound to the chest. Haney was very outspoken against the Muslim Brotherhood, and he's also presented to Congress the document that Laura pointed out to me, this explanatory memorandum from the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood. Are you aware of this Haney case? Do you know anything about what happened to Phil Haney?
I don't. But, there's a great risk today for anybody that sticks their neck out. So be prepared, legally and peacefully use your Second Amendment rights. If you can carry, frankly, either concealed or otherwise, if you're doing this kind of work, and you cannot depend on anybody to defend you other than yourself. So that's what has to be done. And thank God George Zimmerman, was armed when he was attacked by Trayvon Martin. Contrary to the way they presented that, Trayvon Martin was not some young kid. He was a big kid, very big, and he was smashing Zimmerman's head into the ground. There wasn't a political purpose for it. I believe he was upset. He had an issue with his girlfriend that night and other things. We got a lawsuit on that down in Florida. And this is something that everybody needs to take into account today. I mean, there's going to come a point in time, Jason, not too long into the distant future, not too distant future. The people are going to be camped in front of your house. these socialist communists saying, turn the keys over to your house or we will take you out of that house and destroy you. And I don't think that's far off. I really don't. We've seen
Wow.
that kind of thing in South Africa, what happened there with, claiming land that people owned, confiscating it, that kind of thing. President made reference to that. We're in that kind of a period. And just look back to, Russia in 1917. We may be headed in that direction if we don't do anything about it peacefully and legally right now.
Wow. Larry, we've got Nasarema Nam with us on Periscope asking if you can explain what the Corsi Klayman lawsuit is about, Stone and Caputo.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad people are asking that. During the time period that Special Counsel Robert Mueller was conducting his investigation, his witch hunt, he was focusing on a number of people, including Roger Stone and Jerry Corsi, who worked together. Jerry's a very honest guy. He's very God-fearing. Stone thought that Corsi was going to testify against him in some way or do something to harm him. Jerry never had any intent to do that. He would simply tell the truth. That's why he wasn't indicted, and Stone was indicted and convicted on 7 felony counts. And this is my take, is that Stone felt that he had to defame and harm Corsi for his own interests, which is exactly what he did with Randy Credico, a key witness, and basically he talked himself into an indictment. But that being said, he defamed Corsi, he defamed me very viciously, harmed Corsi a lot, harmed me, and we brought lawsuits for defamation, and they're currently in Florida. And if you want to see the deposition that I took recently, you can go to LarryKlayman.com and watch it, and you'll see who Roger Stone is. Okay, a lot of profanity, a lot of attacks on me. He defamed me again during the deposition in a number of areas, but he can't control himself, and that's why Senator Kennedy, not John Kennedy, but the current one from Louisiana, said that Stone should win the Beavis and Butthead Award. He's never seen anyone talk himself into an indictment before, but this is the way he treats people, and you need to hold them accountable, because if you don't hold them accountable, they'll continue to do it over and over again.
Yeah. I don't know if people were aware that this Roger Stone deposition was online, but they can see it at LarryKlayman.com, and I'm going to take a look at that.
We're trying to mitigate the damage that was done to Corsi and me. I want them to see this because it's considerable damage. People don't understand. And, you read you take the Kool-Aid. You can watch Hannity. You can, and I wish Rush the best, and I don't think he knows what he's talking about. But to say that Roger Stone was a victim, no, Roger Stone was no victim. He victimized other people. And frankly, in my opinion, he got what he deserved. And we'll see what happens. He'll probably get a pardon in the end. And this has been my criticism of the president. I love the president, but the one criticism I have is the people that he hangs around. He's got to turn a new page, particularly if he's reelected, and get some people in there who are reputable people, who are honest, and have his back. I mean, Stone had his back, but not in an honest way. And it resulted in getting the president into more difficulty. So I hope that President Trump recognizes that in the future.
I think there are a lot of people who feel that the FBI was excessive in their raid on Roger Stone's house. I know you and Roger have a history, and of course, Roger's behavior once the trial began, the way he acted towards Randy Credico, et cetera, not acceptable,
No,
threatening the judge.
It was before the trial began. But here's the thing, Jason, and people don't understand this. It's not a process crime to lie under oath. Our justice system will break down if you don't tell the truth. I go through it every day as a trial lawyer, having people lie in front of me under oath. I mean, I take offense to that. When I was a Justice Department lawyer, I saw it all the time. And it's not acceptable to threaten or coerce a witness to not tell the truth and commit witness tampering and obstruct justice. I don't care what happened with the FBI. Now, it just so happens that Roger Stone has a fascination and admires the mafia, and that was part of the trial. He told Randy Credico to do a Frank Pantangele, which was basically to lie under oath. I know because he was my campaign manager for a few weeks before we all went our separate ways. He was representing Al Sharpton behind my back and doing other things, so we went our own way. And I didn't wish him any harm. I just wanted him out of my life, period, professional and personal. But I sat there at his house on the banks of Key Biscayne, of Biscayne Bay, and he was saying, "Doesn't this feel great?" He was smoking a cigar. I feel like Hyman Roth, that was Meyer Lansky in the Mafia. Now, just back up a little bit. Someone who admires the Mafia, who refers to it frequently, whether he does have relationships or not, the FBI is going to take it seriously when they raid his house. And so he brought that on himself, and I don't have any sympathy for that either, period.
Understood. So just shifting gears a bit, Larry, we speak frequently about whistleblowers. You've defended whistleblowers in your career. There was this preposterous op-ed in the equally preposterous New York Times written by Mark Zaid, who is one of the principals at that, something Rose, Compass Rose law firm, which is defending the CIA whistleblower, the guy who's the alleged Ukrainian whistleblower, that if we say his name, we're likely to get blocked here on YouTube. This guy is now writing op-eds in the New York Times wanting to change the whistleblower laws under this, fake meme of saying they want to protect whistleblowers. Every legitimate whistleblower that I know, Larry, has been basically run out of their job, persecuted by the bosses. Their lives have been ruined. You've been trying to work with whistleblower Larry Wooten at the Bureau of Land Management in defense of the Bundys, and that guy's been put through the ringer, hasn't he? I mean, this is not a legitimate...
Well, that's right. That's a really good point, Jason. I haven't had any contact with him, but I have asked the Ninth Circuit, and we have a appellate argument on March 23rd in Las Vegas, Nevada. People are invited to attend peacefully and legally, don't make any noise, the Ninth Circuit. The Trump Justice Department allowed the U.S. attorney to take an appeal of the dismissal of Klayman and his sons and other defendants' indictment. Outrageous. Another example of Barr basically just washing his hands of things and letting these corrupt prosecutors in Las Vegas rule the school. These are people that lied to the judge, Judge Navarro, who was sympathetic to them at first because she's a Harry Reid Obama appointee. But even she had to dismiss the indictment, hiding exculpatory evidence, lying. And then a whistleblower came forward, Larry Wooten, high-level Bureau of Land Management supervisor, that testified, at least in letters, that there was a kill list on the heads of the Bundys. They were disparaging their faith. They were hiding evidence. The number one U.S. attorney, Stephen Myray, was in effect threatening him to be quiet, silencing him. And I've asked the Ninth Circuit that if they're not just going to affirm the dismissal, to allow me to take the testimony, either through a deposition or in front of Judge Navarro, of this whistleblower. But you're right. They have persecuted him. I got a number of documents through the Freedom of Information Act request. They did a real number on this guy, and I didn't get all the documents. But this is what happens when you come forward. The deep state, on both sides, Republican and Democrat, will seek to destroy you.
Yeah, and it's a stark contrast to see how this guy has been so jealously protected. I'm talking, of course, about the fake whistleblower, the co-conspirator who tried to destroy this president in a very unsuccessful attempt at impeachment. So, Larry, what do you see happening next if Joe Biden does, in fact, become the Democratic nominee? Does that, I mean, according to you, and I don't disagree, there's no chance of him being prosecuted for anything anyway. So, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Joe Biden's going to run and win? No.
Well, if he lives, okay, I mean, he doesn't have a stroke, because it looks like he's got neurological problems, I mean, to be blunt. I mean, he got his wife and his wife's sister mixed up the other night at his victory speech. I mean, that's how bad it is. And if he in fact survives, he's a placeholder. He's someone who's there against Trump, and he could win. I think it's going to be close. And what the Democrats are trying to do with this coronavirus thing is to create enough uncertainty politically and in the stock market that the economy will be undermined. And even if they weren't trying to do that and make it worse, it is, I think, a very bad situation, this coronavirus. And I want to posit this, Jason. You and I have talked about it. There have been reports that this was an accident at a biological weapons facility in Wuhan, China. It helps explain why the Chinese locked that city down before anyone knew about it. Now, I asked the question. I saw Geraldo Rivera. I actually like Geraldo, in many respects. He's one of the few honest people on Fox News, even if I disagree with some of his views on immigration and otherwise. But he said, where was the CIA? Why didn't we know about this? Where was the Director of National Intelligence? Where was the FBI? Where were our intelligence services? What were they doing? Another screw up. Or maybe they hit it intentionally. But I believe that China has tremendous liability here. Now, I like the Chinese people. I really do, particularly Chinese Americans. But this government is evil, and they're not telling us the truth. And it's much worse than we know. And if it is a biological weapon that got loose, they wouldn't have any immunity because it's in violation of the Geneva Convention and other international treaties, and we can sue them. And they have a lot of assets here, the Chinese. So let me send this message out. If you know of anybody that has been exposed to or has been infected or died as a result of the coronavirus, please have them contact me at leklayman@gmail.com, leklayman@gmail.com, because we're going to bring lawsuits against the Chinese government, and I believe we can collect because their assets are here in this country, and they should have to pay for the massive worldwide damage that they have done. If you want to bring China to its knees, then hold them financially accountable for what went on, and frankly, take them to the criminal court for this.
Wow. It's interesting, Larry. I mean, I am very skeptical of this coronavirus and the news reporting that surrounds it.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure. I've noticed that there's a number of news reports about coronavirus that have some pretty weird aspects to them. Now, I know I've spoken with you offline about my belief that newspapers are frequently used, and now websites, for steganographic messaging, coded messages that are placed in plain sight. I've noticed a remarkable number of 33 messaging surrounding this coronavirus, and I know that highly grounded and intellectual people like yourself usually think this is a little bit far out, but I believe there's something to this. If we look at the number of occurrences of 33s surrounding this whole thing, it just causes me to think that there could be a message being sent. How do we know that the United States didn't, you're talking about the CIA and everyone asking, how could we have this failure? How do we know the CIA didn't put this there, or Bill Gates, or some NGO, George Soros, some private intelligence operative could have done this to screw up China, screw up Trump?
Well, not just that, to swing the election, because we know the CIA hates President Trump. I mean, as they hated President Kennedy, many people believe, reputable people, that the CIA was behind the assassination of President Kennedy because they viewed him as weak on communism, weak on the Soviet Union, having caved in to Castro. We now know that the Cuban Missile Crisis was not a total victory for the United States. In fact, it probably wasn't a victory at all because we removed our missiles from Turkey and we gave the Castros a carte blanche to do whatever they wanted into the future, which continues to today. So I personally believe the CIA, in conjunction with others, maybe the mafia, had President Kennedy hit. And this is a clarion call that I sent out with regard to President Trump, God forbid, but he's got to watch his back because they view him the same way, being soft on Putin. And these people want this president out. We know that. CIA, FBI, NSA, others, they've illegally surveilled him, his family, people around him. We know that. FISA warrants that were issued that were illegal and fraudulent. This is a real threat. So if you really want to get the president out, then cause a pandemic that harms the United States and then blame the president for it and then have the stock market crash. That's one way to do it without resorting to anything more violent. Now, I don't know whether that happened or not. I don't. But it's something that needs to be considered. As far as the use of the number 33, you're more of a believer in that than I am. But I do know that the devil's hour in the middle of the night is 3 a.m., and that has a 3 in it. So maybe we can go that far.
Certainly not a matter of believing or disbelieving. I'm just observing, even Gavin Newsom, said that they're monitoring 84,000 people, but only 33 have tested positive. I mean, it's certainly coincidental. China lockdown spread to 33 million people. I mean, again, it's not a belief or a fear or a numerology observation of this or anything like that. It's, again, it goes to steganographic messaging where
You know what? If you want to get further way out, Jason, I'm going to one up you on being way out.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
All right. Is that there have been a number of articles written by respectable scientists who believe that there is alien life on Earth, not necessarily space creatures walking around, not necessarily, vehicles
Could be a
that are
virus.
going into Santa Monica, but that it's possible that there have been viruses, microbes, whatever, embedded in Earth, either by design or by the laws of nature. Meteors that hit our atmosphere, that disintegrate, hit the Earth, that kind of thing. And maybe this does come from outer space, or maybe it's War of the Worlds in reverse. Who knows? Maybe there's an alien civilization that figured the easy way to do it is to kill us all with a pandemic. Now, I don't think that's probably the case, but I'm saying it's something that needs to be thought about, because there are respectable scientists, Google it, out there right now who say there is likely alien life on Earth.
Another topic, another topic that's come up, Larry, with some other guests is this notion that, we all know that Operation Paperclip brought Nazi scientists into the United States after World War II, gave them new identities, scrubbed their war criminal records, and all this sort of thing. We know what Hitler and the concentration camps were attempting to do to wipe out the Jewish people, basically. So they were engaged in eugenics. There's a number of people who have suggested that there's a long-standing body of research that is geared towards creating biological weapons that target certain genes. And we know that diseases like sickle cell anemia are very targeted towards the Black community, for instance. I know you're not a scientist and a doctor, but I mean, again, this is another possibility that this could be a biological weapon targeting Chinese people.
Well, that's true. It could be. And, look at after 9/11, the anthrax attacks, the strain of anthrax that hit South Florida and that hit Washington, D.C. And I represented 8 postal workers, families, and others who died as a result of the anthrax exposure. I myself was potentially exposed. People, at Judicial Watch, we were, getting mail from that postal facility, Brentwood. This was the strain that the United States had developed, and that George H.W. Bush, Rumsfeld, and Cheney gave to Saddam Hussein. It was the same strain. It was developed in a lab in Virginia, a biological weapon lab. And 2 people, because the FBI was caught with their pants down, so to speak, or for whatever reason, blamed 2 people for this. One of them committed suicide. That's, the emotional damage that was done to him. And then there was a South African that was blamed too. And no one ever found out who was behind the anthrax attacks to this day. It's a lot like Stephen Paddock, in Las Vegas with the massacre. They covered it up. And I believe that our intelligence services are covering this up right now, as well as the FBI. I do believe it. They know the cause. Why doesn't President Trump talk about it? He's never shy. Has he been put under a gag order here by these intelligence agencies? Have they threatened him that they'll destroy him even more if he actually tells the truth? Or is it the fact that if it does come from China, that we don't want to start a world war over this potential accident? I have a sense that it was an accident. I don't think the Chinese did it on purpose, but they shouldn't have been messing around with biological weapons to begin with.
I mean, again, I'm a little bit cautious of jumping to a conclusion, but I'm considering the possibility that perhaps the United States did it to China to try. I mean, it's interesting to me, Larry, that the countries that seem to be most affected by it are China. I mean, the Iran vice president is one of 7. And there was somebody in Iran, a minister or something, who died from it. So it's quite convenient that it's affecting enemies of the United States much more than it is the United States itself.
Well, remember that Iran's a proxy of China. China supports it financially because it's a thorn in the side of the United States and Israel. And, they all band together. But I can't believe that we're that stupid, Jason, not to know that it would spread to the United States unless there was some motive to destabilize the United States to get President Trump out of office. I really, it's hard for me to imagine. Even the skeptic Larry Klayman has a hard time going that far. Just like, I can't go so far as to believe that 9/11 was an inside job by George W. Bush. I can't get myself to do that. As much as I dislike him as a president, the idiot that he was, that brought us endless war in the Middle East. I can't quite go that far. So we have maybe we have a difference of opinion on this.
Definitely on that. So we'll have to have a dinner sometime where I'll spend a little more time trying to fill you in on what we know about 9/11.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's even Larry Klayman, the so-called conspiracy theorist, has a hard time.
So let's talk about this, Larry, because you're there in California. We've got Governor Newsom declaring a state of emergency after one death in the state. It seems excessive to me. I think people die of the flu and pneumonia, people who are old or, young babies or people with compromised immune systems. How do you feel as a resident of California that the governor...
In Florida, California today, but in my home state of Florida, the governor also declared a state of emergency, and so did the governor in Washington State. And frankly, I don't think it's an overstatement. I don't like Newsom. He's a pretty boy. He gets on my nerves, and he's a terrible governor. But you've got Rick Santorum, not Santorum. I'm having a senior moment here. The governor of Florida did the same thing in my native state. I don't think it's an overstatement. Yeah, no, I think it is a state of emergency. I really do on that. I don't fault him for this.
Wow. So where do you see this coronavirus going? Are you preparing, stocking up canned food and stuff like that?
I'm not doing that. I'm preparing to die. No, I'm just kidding. But,
Larry.
I got my plot on Mount Olive in Jerusalem. They're going to bury me standing up. Okay, they can FedEx me over there. Huh?
Is that true?
No, I don't. But I wouldn't mind. I think they're running out of space over there. But I think it is as bad as people say. It's just a gut feeling. It is a gut feeling, and I think it's right. You have to go living your life. You can't, stop traveling. I'm traveling, constantly. Your loved ones, you want them to be safe and not expose them to this. But I'm not going to change the way I live. And, que sera, sera.
Now, Larry, we've been waiting to hear some news on the lawsuit that Laura's got pending against Rashida Tlaib. What can you tell us about that? Anything happening?
Well, it's another case of a judge. You kindly, Jason, gave me a Minnesota counsel that we'll be seeking to have represent locally. But we filed a case in Minnesota federal court, and this is another example of a federal judge not wanting a hot potato in his courtroom. So he dismisses the case, saying there's no federal claim, go to a state court. He didn't want that, but it'll be refiled in a state court very shortly. And she needs to be held accountable. She's a radical Muslim, anti-Semite, anti-Christian. She needs to be held to account.
Yeah, and it seems that a lot of enemies
It was for assault and battery against Laura. She also can't control herself.
Right.
So,
yeah, we showed that clip a while ago. It seems a lot of the enemies of Laura Loomer are being brought to justice. Michael Avenatti not having a very good time, rotting in whatever jail he's sitting in right now. So just taking us back to Joe Biden, Larry, when we do this citizens grand jury, what can we do to... There's a lot of people who send me emails and they feel that the citizens grand juries aren't going to be effective. What could we do to allay that concern in viewers' minds and, more importantly, to actually dig in and make the citizens grand jury result take effect?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. We have the right, to have a citizens grand jury. We have the right to have citizens trials. We have the right to convict, to sentence, to carry the sentences out. You've heard of citizen's arrest. You can do that. Now, I always advocate peaceful and legal means. I'm not going to arrest anybody physically. Uh, and I trust that at that point we can get it enforced. Either find a judge who's willing to stick his neck out, who's had it, or the president himself. But at least, as you put it, it's a way to educate the American people that we have our own legal system, that it's in our own hands. And it's a way, frankly, to embarrass the establishment in Washington, D.C., and to weaken them, because they need to be removed. Every single one of them, peacefully and legally, need to be removed. And I mean also Mitch McConnell, because he's done a couple good things here, but frankly, the guy's part of the whole Republican establishment there, and nothing ever happens. So, it has many different aspects, but in theory, it can be enforced. And as I've said many times, going back to the Old West and otherwise, before we had a Justice Department on July 1st, 1870, it was the American people who meted out justice themselves. And we are much better arbiters of justice than our federal judges, and in particular. And it's these judges who, if you go back to the years leading up to the Revolution, the same kinds of judges were in the court of St. James of King George III, yes men that rubber stamped what the king wanted. And now we're back full circle. We don't have a way to get rid of them. Impeaching them is not going to happen through the House Judiciary Committee. One of the last people impeached was Alice E. Hastings. A Miami judge, got caught taking bribes. He was impeached. He then ran for Congress and won. He's been there ever since. And they get life tenure, and they think they have immunity. And we need to remove their life tenure. We need to remove their immunity, and we need to hold them accountable when they intentionally try to hurt people or throw cases out because they don't like it in their courtroom. They are our most important public servants, but in practice, the federal judges are the worst of the worst. And I say this figuratively. I don't want it to happen. I don't want there to be any violence. But I say it just, to make the point, is that if the revolution breaks out again, the first to be taken to the guillotines will be the federal judges, because they betrayed us. Yeah. Generally, they betrayed us.
Now, in furtherance of that question, Larry, have there been any moves in a direction that is helping, the cause with the previous citizens grand jury? Has that done what you wanted it to do?
Well, we're going to be trying, that was just an indictment. So we're going to be trying Mueller in the next several months. Right. And we're going to have witnesses, and we're going to try them, and we're going to put it in front of a people's court.
Great. Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, I think it's a process, and the thing is, you and I get into these conversations, obviously the things you're sharing with us, people take them and they evaluate them, but we can't give up, even though it seems so, unlikely to make a change. You got to keep going. I mean, look, obviously, I think people need to understand that you're saying these things to give us a realistic view of things as you see them, but you persist. So you're not giving up. I don't want people to get the wrong idea from what we're saying.
I don't give up. I'll tell you what I've given up. I've given up watching Fox News, okay? Before this show started, I had the Golf Channel on behind me. Okay, there's more reality on the Golf Channel and the Tennis Channel than there is on Fox News, because that gives people a false sense that the government's going to come to help them. And they're not. And you see these people from public interest groups go on there and say, okay, now I've discovered this. Okay, government, you do it. We can't expect them to do anything for ourselves. Not at all. And that's what I'm trying to do. And, there's certain things that I can't say because I don't want to incite violence, and I don't want to see anything other than peaceful means happen. But I do honestly believe that the country is going to get to a crossroads when they get educated enough, where this country is going to explode. And it's going to first start on the left when Bernie Sanders doesn't get nominated for president of the United States. You're going to see every radical group in the street, and look out, because it's going to start then. And then you may have a reaction from the right, from the militias. I want to see that. And I think it could be really bad. And I'm trying to prevent that. So I'm trying to give people a peaceful and legal means to affect change in this country. And one way I want to do it next year, Jason, and you're invited because you're not only a super intelligent person, but you're a great videographer. We're going to have a Third Continental Congress in Philadelphia. We're going to get experts and we're going to talk about some of the changes we need to make. And we can't be afraid of tinkering with our Constitution. Now, the founding fathers were enlightened by God, but they weren't God. And just as one example, their biggest mistake was to give federal judges life tenure and immunity. Yeah. And that needs to be removed. Needs to be removed.
I do agree with that for sure, Larry, and I'll look forward to being there. So the other thing that a lot of people have been emailing me about, and that there's been a lot of hay made over, is this recent order from a judge, actually it's Judge Lamberth, somebody that you've got quite a lot of experience with, that Hillary Clinton's going to have to give a deposition in this email flap. Now again, this is a complicated legal matter that people see a headline and they suddenly think it's a big deal, but there are a number of reasons to take this with a healthy dose of salt, right?
Well, there is. And I mean, here's the problem. I love Judge Lamberth, okay? And I don't talk to him about ongoing cases, but after I left Judicial Watch years later, I became very good friends with Judge Lamberth. I saw him once and I wished him Merry Christmas. And I said, Your Honor, it's too bad we can't have lunch. We've got all these cases. And he said to me, Larry, we'll be too old to move by the time that happens. Well, when I no longer had cases, I got to know him on a personal level. He's a very nice man. He's the most courageous of anything that exists on the federal bench today, but he's not courageous enough. And he could have given us Hillary's deposition in the years that there was Chinagate. We could have put Hillary away, and he flinched. And we had a number of things pending. When George W. Bush was elected president, Judge Lamberth from Texas, he kind of lost interest in pursuing anything, including the first email scandal, where we had criminal contempt proceedings for hiding email. Hillary was in on that with other people in the White House. And the thing with Judicial Watch and getting that deposition is that it's really too little too late. Lamberth, number one, let the statute of limitations run on Benghazi. So she can't be prosecuted, for anything that may be turned up. Besides, she's going to lie. Before this deposition takes place, I can guarantee Williams and Connolly is going to be going to the D.C. Circuit to try to block it. So it's going to be a while if it ever happens. And secondly, frankly, no one cares about Hillary anymore. They really don't. Things have, overtaken time. And, it's too little too late. And here's what I take exception with the judge. And I don't know that he did this on purpose, but I know the way he thinks. He's a very political thinker, as they all are. We have a case with Sheriff Arpaio. Clearly, he was defamed by CNN, Huffington Post, and Rolling Stone. He was called a convicted felon. He's not a convicted felon. He was found liable for a misdemeanor. We go into court. The judge holds a hearing. I'm thankful for that because most judges won't come out of their chambers on cases like this. And he starts saying that, generally speaking, actual malice is difficult to prove. It needs to be pled with specificity. And I said, Your Honor, if you don't think we pled it with enough specificity, we can just amend the complaint. But how can these press entities not claim that they knew that he wasn't a convicted felon? They cover him every day. They trash Sheriff Arpaio every day. They know that that was false. So yes, there's actual malice, which is not telling the truth or a reckless disregard for the truth. He sits on the case for a while. He dismisses the case with prejudice. And I shoved it right back at him with greater specificity. It's back in front of him right now. Larry, you should
remind everybody that with prejudice normally means it's gone for good. You can't bring it back.
Yeah, but what I said was, we didn't have a fair and full hearing on this. And I asked you during the oral argument to be able to amend the complaint. So here it is, Your Honor. You asked for it. You got it, Toyota, my favorite phrase. Now you've got the specificity. So I gave him back the hot potato. But here's what I think he did, is that he thought he might be making a decision sometime in the future with Hillary Clinton. So he does a throwaway with Arpaio, to show that he's, quote, even-handed, because he's been subject to a lot of criticism over the years. They used to call him and I the Bobbsey twins. They thought I had the judge in my pocket. I did not. I didn't even talk to him about cases. But, I love the guy. But I got to be candid here, because even Judge Lamberth, as good as he is very political. And he could have ended the whole Clinton nightmare years ago, back in the 1990s, and he flinched. I never got Hillary's deposition. She was a defendant in the Filegate case where 900 FBI files she got through Craig Livingston on adversaries and even those on her side of the fence that she didn't trust, like James Carville. And, he could have put Hillary away, but he didn't. And to me, too little, too late. And frankly, Hillary's passe. And now the statute of limitations on the crimes at Benghazi have run.
Well, that's really the most important aspect. I mean, what could come out of this deposition? I mean, the email server, I've heard this, that the statute of limitations has run, but if she's actually engaged in exchanging emails with foreign countries that involve sedition and things like that, isn't there no statute of limitations on that?
Well, not that I know of. There may be, but at this point, people aren't looking that carefully. And then he released his finding, on the eve of Super Tuesday and the crashing of the stock market. So no one really paid much attention. Even Fox didn't give it big play. But look, it's better than nothing. I mean, I think Lambert is the best federal judge out there for this, but even he won't go the distance, and that's why the American people need to do it for themselves.
Right. And there was a lot of, I think it was in WikiLeaks that they were saying that John Podesta was sending around emails about Judge Scalia that included the term wet work, which I think most people who have ever seen The Sopranos or anything like that know what wet work is all about. So even though these federal judges have lifetime appointments, there are certainly people who can get to them and influence them. They are only human.
Not only that, I don't want to see any harm to a federal judge for sure. I'll be the first to defend them. But you remember the Pelican Brief, John Grisham, what happened to a couple Supreme Court justices. I think Scalia was killed. I really do. And
I agree.
Someone on the left did it. In fact, there was a story in the National Enquirer which didn't always get things wrong and doesn't always get things wrong, that he had gone to Texas on a hunting trip. He liked to hunt for ducks. He did not take his U.S. Marshal with him. Usually they have protection. He was found with a pillow over his head in his hotel room. And National Enquirer had a story from an alleged whistleblower that he was set up with a prostitute. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what was reported. And that it may have been a hit at the time. And maybe that's why I didn't take security detail. And then curiously enough, no autopsy, no investigation.
Wow, I didn't know that detail. That's interesting.
Go back and look at it, Google it. And of course it makes sense because he was the biggest thorn in the side of the left, the biggest thorn in the side. And he became an icon in the conservative community.
I mean, but you've also just outlined what sounds like an incredibly devious plan. Whoever knows this guy, I don't know him, I don't know his marital situation, but it is conceivable that you find some married guy, some judge, you lure him with an attractive woman, this convinces him not to have his security detail there, and then he's killed. It's quite simple.
Yeah, well, it needs to be investigated, and it's something that I wanted to look into and try to, but it's very hard to break through the veneer, particularly when the family doesn't want anything done. And you have to wonder why the family didn't want to follow up on this. Look, married men sometimes stray. I mean, that's a fact. And, Justice Scalia was not in bad health at the time. I mean, they portrayed that, but he was not in bad health at the time. And although he wasn't perfect, there were things that he did which I didn't like. Even if he's a strict constructionist, I mean, he strayed from that. I mean, he said, capital punishment is okay because we did it at the time of the Constitution. Well, if it's not, there's nothing about capital punishment in our Constitution. So he varied from his own interpretation of the law. But and he would never look at the issue of Obama's birth certificate. I asked him a question about that. He looked at me like I was crazy, even though the law of nations of Emmer Grittel says you have to be born in this country to two citizen parents to be a natural born citizen. He wouldn't answer my question and just walked off. Even he was afraid of that. So he wasn't perfect, but he was a great justice, and under the circumstance of how political they are. And he was the biggest thorn in the side of the left. And I do believe he was hit. I really believe he was hit.
And certainly other judges would know that or be caused to know that or reminded of that or something So it's complicated. I think, a lot of people who are watching alternative news think that there's a sort of a simple answer to this stuff, but it just doesn't seem to be the case, Larry. It's so many complicated,
Well,
interrelated things.
you and I, Jason, agree on most things, 90% of all things. I mean, conspiracies happen. And the fact that people call us conspiracy theorists, Dr. Corsi, others, that's a badge of honor because, SHIT happens, basically. And
Yeah.
conspiracies do happen. I used to have a bumper sticker in my office at Judicial Watch that says Clinton happens. Okay. So it's, it does happen.
Yeah. We've got just a few more minutes, Larry, before the hour expires. Was there anything else that you wanted to discuss?
Well, I want people to share your show, to support it. It's very important. You let me tell the truth. My Radio America show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Please sign up for that. You can find it everywhere. Whether it's iTunes or Spotify or Patreon or whatever, because we need to educate. Right now, education is the most important thing, and the American people are beginning to be educated. They're beginning to understand more. And if there's a bright side to Biden, is that the Democratic Party, saw how dangerous that Bernie Sanders is, at least the establishment part. So there's hope here that we can change things. Now, Biden's not the vehicle. I mean, the guy doesn't even know where he is half the time, and he's an empty suit. He would be the dumbest president probably in our lifetime. He's so dumb that he plagiarized the works of other people, which even the Washington Post exposed. So, the American people need to understand the facts of life, and I hope that they will follow what you do and what I do and disseminate it widely. YouTube has limited the viewership. I've been at 45,000 viewers now for at least 5 to 7 years. It's a complete charade. Laura Loomer's antitrust case, along with mine, is going to be argued at the D.C. Circuit on April 15th. I hope people will come and watch. And we have another case against Facebook for calling her dangerous and a domestic terrorist in Florida. We're in every front. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, join our Justice League, our leftist strike force, our judicial selection strike force, our coalition of the Jewish right, which includes Christians as well. And, get up off the couch, put the popcorn and put the beer down. If you're drinking beer, not Diet Coke or whatever, and actually do something. And turn off Fox News because, frankly, Fox News is just simply a reality show.
Right. The other thing that we should do, Larry, is we should remind people to vote for Laura Loomer for Congress. If they're in Florida's 21st district, it's going to be very important for people to support Laura. She's the antidote to the Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar squad. And I certainly believe that we need a woman like Laura in Congress to counteract some of the crazy jihadi socialists that have been taking over and that have infiltrated in essentially exactly the same way that Laura explained to me in that document that Phil Haney refers to in his testimony before Congress, the explanatory memorandum from the files of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Very brave woman. I can't endorse her as the head of Freedom Watch, but I can endorse her personally. And I have, and I represent her. I know Laura. Brave woman, fine woman. I will vote for her. And I hope other people will as well. I say that in my personal capacity. So Demetric Penny, who's running in Texas, the brave African-American policeman who has sued Black Lives Matter and Farrakhan and New Black Panthers Party, paid a price. These are the true patriots in our country, not the people, the clowns on Capitol Hill in the courts, and frankly, the deep state that surrounds our great president.
Demetric Penny is running for Congress?
Yes, he is, unopposed in Texas.
Wow, that's great.
You got to get him on your show. I had him on my radio show this weekend.
Oh, absolutely. That would be great. Definitely want to try to find that webpage to allow everyone to take a look. I'll have that ready next time, but Demetric Penny is the former Dallas police sergeant who is suing the Dallas Morning News.
He's still Dallas police sergeant.
Oh, he is?
They allowed him to run as sergeant. Yeah. I mean, like you and like Laura and like my other clients, Sheriff Arpaio, Justice Roy Moore, a very brave person that people have tried to destroy, and they couldn't do it. And he comes back like the Energizer Bunny. He's my brother, and he is more courageous, African American, than 99.9% of the whites in this country who run every time they're accused of being racist.
Right.
He stands there and he fights.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day. It's always good speaking with you. People should visit freedomwatchusa.org and support the ongoing efforts there of Larry and his team. Operations like Freedom Watch can't continue without your support, so please visit the website and donate if you're able. And Larry and his crew are going to keep on with the type of work that they've been doing for the past several years. And thank you for doing that, Larry. I also want to remind people that they can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Later on today, we're going to have another episode of Dr. Corsi's Prescription for America. Don't miss that sponsor exclusive show. I'll see everybody later. Larry, thanks so much.
You too. God bless, Jason. Thank you. You're great.
Thanks everybody for watching.